Good afternoon and welcome to ICE webinars. Today we are joined by Dr. Edmund Knopp, Vice President of Medical Affairs at Hyperfine Inc., and Susan Rowan, Senior Manager Customer Success and Clinical Support North America at Hyperfine Inc. Edmund has over 30 years of experience in clinical care and research in radiology, neuroradiology, and MR imaging. And Susan has over 20 years of experience in medical imaging and is a certified X-ray and MRI technologist. ICE webinars would like to thank our sponsor, Hyperfine Inc. Hyperfine Inc. is the groundbreaking medtech company that has redefined brain imaging with the SWOOP system, the world's first FDA-cleared portable ultra-low-field magnetic brain imaging system, capable of providing imaging at multiple points of care. The mission of Hyperfine Inc. is to revolutionize patient care globally through transformational, accessible, clinically relevant diagnostic imaging and data solutions. So to learn more, please visit hyperfine.io. Now, after a very successful 2024 ICE Expo last month, just a quick reminder to save the date for our 2025 ICE Expo, which will take place at the Rosen Plaza Hotel, Orlando, Florida, February the 22nd to the 24th. The Imaging Conference and Expo is the only conference dedicated to imaging directors, radiology administrators, and imaging engineers. ICE offers valuable CE credits from the ASRT and ACI and is in a unique community of keen decision makers and influential imaging professionals. So for more details about that, please visit attendice.com. Today's webinar is eligible for one Art Category A CE credit by the HRA, and you can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey, which will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your one CE credit, and you'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. We'll wrap up today's presentation with a Q&A, so please submit your questions anytime using the questions feature on the webinar dashboard. Now, let's kick off today's webinar by giving away one of our ICE gym bags to the attendee that can tell me the answer to the following trivia question. March is Red Cross Month. What is the name of the nurse who founded the American Red Cross? Answer now using the questions feature on your dashboard, and I'll reveal the answer at the end of the webinar. As I mentioned earlier, Dr. Edmund Knopp and Susan Rowan are our presenters today, and they will be discussing technical and clinical insights into ultra-low field MR imaging, an emerging paradigm in medical technology. So Susan, you may begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. I'm very excited to spend the next few minutes with everyone, and I believe there's a good morning, good afternoon, and I think there might be a good evening to some of you joining us. So thank you all. As mentioned, my humble roots began in X-ray as an X-ray technologist, and truthfully, I think I got most of my ICU experience in that realm. Portable X-ray, a lot of times up in, I worked in a trauma center quite frequently and visiting the ICU environment. When I moved into the MRI capacity, I didn't travel to the ICU quite as much, obviously. However, those patients then traveled to the MR department. In regards to movement of a typical ICU patient, as much as I think most of you have either come in contact or been involved in imaging of ICU patients. One of the most critical things is the movement, certainly leaving the floor of the ICU down to an imaging department. And there's been numerous studies that have indicated that just that movement of an ICU patient can result in adverse events ranging from 22 to 79%, which is quite remarkable. Here in the US, where I'm based, about 5 million patients are admitted to the ICU annually. 20% of those patients require transport to the MR department. That being said, along with that range of potential adverse events, we're looking at about $1.7 billion that it costs the US healthcare system in terms of the related adverse events that occur when these ICU patients are transported. One of the things to break that down a little bit further, what do we mean by transporting of an ICU patient? A lot of times in the traditional MR department, that transport only starts when they arrive in your department, but really that transport begins right when that order goes into the system for that patient to receive an MR. So they're looking at the nurse in the unit, potentially needing to sedate that patient, waiting for orders, making sure the patient is connected to proper MR compatible devices, potentially waiting even for transport teams to be able to assist, being able to leave the floor with the appropriate medical staff that need to be involved in transporting that patient. And then just the movement of that patient through a hospital. A lot of times MR departments, certainly in older hospitals, are located in the basement, and that is strictly based off of the need to build out a very large environment, one that can sustain the weight of those big MRI machines, the 1.5 Tesla, the 3 Tesla magnets. So you can be looking at not just moving a patient down the hall, but multiple floors, and sometimes even into different towers. And depending if new hospitals have built new wings where their MRs are housed, you could be looking at quite a distance for those patients to move. And then again, keeping with what is involved in that transport of an ICU patient to the MR department in a traditional environment, you need to then return the patient to that, obviously, the ICU. And a lot of times, you'll be moving the patient out of the MR environment, moving that table. Most tables in the regular 1.5 Tesla magnets are removable, so that in the event of an emergency and or being able to move patients out safely to an environment where you can transfer them back to, say, an ICU bed. A lot of times there's only one table. I know in the hospital I worked at, we did have one table for the longest time. And the only reason why we ended up with 2 MR tables for our 1 magnet was because we noticed that when something was occurring with the ICU patient, we allowed the patient to remain on that MR table to be able to tend to the patient, to medically intervene in anything that was necessary. And in actual fact, that then stopped us from being able to even continue on with the regular imaging of, say, outpatients. So when you look at what is the normal workflow for these critical ill patients, the transport certainly is a critical step. And again, with the number of adverse events that can occur through that transport process, you want to consider what things go into that whole movement of a patient, and not just the potential for adverse events, but also the delays. And I just mentioned the one when you could potentially have 1 MR table available. When you're looking at imaging an ICU patient, it's not just the imaging, it's the entire workflow, resulting possible not just those potential for adverse events to occur, but also for delays on either end. Again, starting with the unit and the ICU movement of the patient, there's a lot of times you're waiting for, say, the support staff, or waiting for the patient to be able to enter the magnet, and then waiting for the patient to be potentially stabilized again, to be able to be transported back up to the ICU, waiting to interpret those images. A lot of times those medical decision makers aren't accompanying the patients. They're then remote, looking at images, potentially through a PACS system. And again, those time delays in getting those answers do accumulate in terms of the efficiency of getting answers to questions that maybe need immediate medical attention. So MRI for ICU patients, and I mentioned my scenario where I was at my hospital where we only had 1 magnet and 1 table, eventually 2 tables, and that really did come about because of the critical ICU patients and needing maybe to keep those patients on those tables longer, and then ultimately delaying our workflow. But these delays occur in some of the largest academic centers, and certainly here in the US, there's more than usually more than 1 MR, especially at these large academic centers. And these centers too experience scanning for 24 hours. They're not stopping. They scan through the evenings and the night shifts. But these centers as well are experiencing that, at least 43% of their inpatients are going to experience a delay in imaging of up to 12 hours or even longer. Studies have been written across many institutions, but particularly 2 just in the New York City area. And, they're experiencing significant delays in the throughput of their inpatients. So when you think about the movement of these patients, and these are patients who are critical, they're looking to get imaging to answer questions, to make maybe changes of care, or to decide what is actually even going on in terms of a change of a mental status. But then there's also the other side where there's patients just looking to be discharged. And that could be maybe outside of, out of the ICU into maybe a step down area, or potentially even discharged from the unit. I routinely go to hospitals across the US, and I can say that when I walk in there, come on Friday, there are many, many, many patients waiting to just get that final clearance. And that could be whether, or between checking the ventricles or looking at maybe a subdural status. And all they need is that clearance to be able to be discharged. The cost that then incurs to the hospital, the delay in the patients returning home. And as you probably all maybe have had an opportunity to either be a patient yourself or a family member, you know that you always do better once you get home. So these patients are having avoidable extended hospital stays. So when we look at that traditional workflow of these patients, the critical patients through the hospital, we're looking at those increased stays in hospitals, which ultimately preclude patients from being admitted to those ICUs, and ultimately may involve patients being transferred to other institutions and further away from family members. We know that it takes anywhere from 2 to 6 ICU staff members to accompany these patients. And then with 1 in 3 of those patients experiencing an adverse event through that transport, during the imaging, and then that return of that patient to the unit. So not only is that putting the patients in a very unfortunate situation, but that's also, the hospital is also incurring those costs of those adverse events as well. So basically, you're left with a high cost for the hospitals and potentially very poor outcomes for these patients. So what is it that we can look to change where we can reduce the adverse events, reduce those potential costs of the hospitals, improve the workflow, have better point of care decision and more timely decisions and earlier discharge for these patients. And here we go. Welcome to Hyperfine's Swoop system. It is the first FDA cleared portable brain MR imaging system. And I would love to kind of go through some of the features here. First and foremost, it is a permanent magnet, meaning that there are no cryogens. It does not require any liquid hydrogen. It does not quench. The magnet is always on. And one of the unique things about this system is that it requires only the capacity of a standard outlet, which averages about 900 watts. So this can be plugged into a regular outlet in any wall, in any room. One of the things it is as well is it is controlled, fully motorized. It is driven by a joystick. So if there's any gamers out there in the audience, yes, you probably have a little bit of an advantage to driving this system. But let me tell everyone else who's not a gamer, you'll learn very quickly. The system is very easily moved through hallways and through doorways and into very crowded ICU rooms, with typically have quite an amount of equipment in those rooms. One of the things you will notice is that it does have a very interesting structure on the very top. That is our 5 Gauss guard. What that represents is in a typical MR environment, you would typically have a line on the floor, which is very much the no-go zone, that anything past that line is highly scrutinized, is checked, double-checked, and sometimes quadruple checked to make sure it does not become close enough to the magnet to cause any issues, projectiles, etc. We have this as a representation on our system. It is expandable, so you can get in and out of small doorways and things like that. However, everything outside of this 5 Gauss line, 5 Gauss guard, is completely safe. And when you think about an MR environment or an ICU environment, and then a traditional MRI environment, you don't usually think the two mix very easily. When you've got all of that big equipment, oxygen cylinders, etc., I can say to you that anything outside of this line is completely safe, which then plays into the equipment that you can then have just outside that line within that ICU environment. One of the things that we all know who work in MR is that radio frequency waves is what we use to help generate imaging. However, we don't want unnecessary radio frequency. And when we have monitors and we have a lot of machines, they do give off that within that ICU environment. So you can see here that this shield door does help to shield any extraneous RF. And it is movable. So when you're going to position your patients, you can slide it open and be able to then slide it closed. And it acts as a noise canceling device. This system does have a 8-channel transmit receive head coil. It is also translucent, which allows you to be able to visualize your patient's positioning. And also when you have patients that have any head dressings and anything that's trauma related, you're able to visualize that positioning of the head and make sure that they're comfortable as well as positioned appropriately. The system does come with an iPad. I know that may throw everyone maybe for a loop, for lack of a better word. However, this is what actually controls the operation of the MR system. You can control the scan sequences, you can start the scans, you can stop the scans, you can view the images, as well as send your images off to your local PACS system. So all in all, the system is quite heavy. However, it is fully motorized. So you are not ever in a position of needing to extend any of your own personal energy in moving this system. It moves quite smoothly through hallways. With that being said, I'd love to show you how this system does move. As you can see, it is moving without a whole lot of effort through the hall. Again, using the joystick to control the movements. This is the system being brought into the head of the bed of an ICU patient. Here you can see the head coil plugging into a regular standard wall outlet. Moving this into the scan mode, there's 3 modes on the scanner: scan, charge, and then also transport. Here you can see that there's not a very long distance at all to move this ICU patient. We're averaging probably maybe 2 to 3 feet, depending on where the patient is positioned on the bed. You can see here there's an oxygen tank just behind the operator. There is a monitor, there is a ventilator, and you see the Gauss guard line is extended where all the equipment is maintained outside that line. The doctor, physician is able to make decisions at the bedside. This is truly the essence of point of care and decision making with the least amount of disturbance to this ICU patient. And again, very simply, the system is then removed, patient is made comfortable, and remotely, again, motorized movement of the system is able to be removed from the ICU environment. And again, the amount of equipment in this room and the fact that we're able to bring this system in, we're not needing to move anything out of the room. We're not needing to put a patient on a MR compatible vent. All allows us to have better outcomes because the patient's not being moved, but also quicker decision-making process and bedside decisions, and able to come in and not disturb the nursing situation on the floor where the nurses aren't needing to move outside of the actual department. So when you think of what the hyperfine swoop system is, we are considered ultra low field, and I think anyone that's been in the world of MR has thought that for the longest time, and I think most of us were always under the thought that higher Tesla, higher field is the way to go. And I can honestly say there's been an incredible shift of that mentality, certainly over the last few years. And these systems are all 1 Tesla and below, and going right down to where hyperfine is as ultra low field. So each of these, we have a hyperfine system, which is the head only system. There's prostate, there's the extremity system, and then these 0.5 and 1 Tesla systems do still require a fixed room and fixed environment with some build out for those rooms to accommodate those machines. Truly hyperfine comes in as a fully portable system, and as well, I think we kind of tease a little bit. It draws a little bit more electricity than a toaster. So I mean, the ability to have this system in areas where there's just a regular outlet capability is I think is truly speaks to the abilities of the engineering and the design team that brought this system to life. So again, just kind of taking a little step backwards in terms of what this system, this portable brain imaging system is able to do. It is able to be moved throughout the hospital environment with ease. It is able to be beside ventilators. It is able to be near oxygen tanks, ECMO machines, monitors, I think a lot of us, perhaps have come across patients who are connected to an ECMO system. And those patients would never have the opportunity to have MR imaging. That is just not something that goes to the department for very, specific safety reasons. And one of the things with this ultra low field system is that we're finding that a lot of centers are being able to refine their screening process, which is the fact that what would be necessarily absolutely prudent to be cautious about in a 1.5 or higher Tesla, or even a 1 Tesla, may not be required for the ultra low field system. So we do see that hospitals are able to modify and somewhat reduce the screening form and the need to screen as much as they would in a regular 1.5 or regular department system. So I'd like to just take the opportunity now to say thank you very much for the brief overview of the system. And I think, with this being said, seeing some imaging from our system, Dr. Knopp, I'm going to politely pass over the controls to yourself. And thank you very much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed seeing the hyperfine swoop system.
Thank you very much, Susan. Before moving on to the imaging, what I'd like to do is just review a little bit of the use cases that our typical sites are doing. And it's typically, as Susan indicated, the unstable ICU patient or the patient that's too difficult to get down to the main scanner, or if the main scanners are overloaded, then it's getting that patient an image to answer the clinical question. Remember, we are not trying to supplant or obviate the need for high field imaging, but rather providing a means to achieve more appropriate patient care in a more timely fashion. So with that, why don't we go through some clinical examples? The other thing I'd like to remind everyone is to please put any questions you have in the question and answer section, and we'll get to those following the presentation. So with that, I am going to, I think my screen is shared. Yes, it is. We'll look at some clinical examples. And let me open up this case and we'll discuss the capabilities of the scanner. The images look slightly different than what you may be accustomed to at high field, but basically what we're talking about is
I am so sorry to interrupt, but Dr. Knopp, we have lost your audio.
Eddie?
So sorry for the interruption. We're going to work on getting Dr. Knopp's audio back. So if you'll just pause for one moment, we will have him back online with us. So sorry for the technical difficulties here, everyone.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to fill in until Dr. Knopp is back online. Excuse me. Just to cover some of the sequences that the swoop system does perform. For those very familiar with the MR sequences, we basically have your bread and butter sequencing, those traditional sequences that are mostly used and then modified through different iterations in the MR world. So we have T1, we have T2, we have both fast in the standard T2, we have flare sequencing, diffusion of all things, able to be performed on our system, and a flare. And basically what we're able to do is bring those sequences together, provide, as Dr. Knopp was saying, provide decisions that can be made, and linear decisions where we're looking for answers to binary questions, where we're looking at a change of mental status and whether or not something is evident. We certainly aren't, changing the workflow for the standard MRI. We are additional to that. When we think of stroke patients and things like that, we're not removing the use of even, the CT in a stroke environment. However, we're complementing that, where that patient is unable to travel to even CT after that initial imaging. We're able to go to that bedside, provide follow-up stroke imaging. And I know Dr. Knopp's got some phenomenal images here that he was going to show in regards to the stroke imaging, and other things too. I mean, we also actually have been very successful within the pediatric realm and have been seeing a incredible uptake of interest within that capacity as well. So I think Dr. Knopp may be coming back on, so I do apologize for that delay, but I think Dr. Knopp is going to be able to share the imaging that he was just speaking about. Dr. Knopp, you are not, I don't hear you.
Dr. Knopp, if you can hear us, it might make sense for you to turn off your camera and see if that allows for some more bandwidth. Again, so sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone.
If you want to bring up, yeah, I can actually bring up the PowerPoint.
Susan, I actually do see here a couple of questions that maybe we could answer while Dr. Knopp is rejoining. So one of them is actually, how does the portable MRI machine sound compared to conventional MRI? Does it disturb others in the ICU?
I love that question. Thank you. And bad on me to not even have spoken about it. So lovely enough, the portable MR system is the noise that it makes, obviously, is going to be a little bit similar to what you would hear in terms of what we know as the traditional knocking noise and the gradient noise. However, the decibel level of the portable system is well below that, requiring earplugs. And what I've seen, and certainly in the smaller children and or young adults, is that they instantly fall asleep. That rhythmic noise, and I've put myself in a scanner more than once in my professional career, and I do tend to fall asleep in there, but not everyone's comfortable. So yes, thank you for that question. It is remarkably quieter, and to the point where conversations can happen around the system. I've had systems, and full disclosure, I learned Taylor Swift's album by scanning a 16-year-old who was very nervous, and we put our phones close enough to the MR system where she could hear Taylor Swift singing for a good 35 minutes. So you can bring your phones close to the system and listen to music, which certainly we have music that gets piped into the regular 1.5 scanners. But to have that flexibility, children, we've had, I don't know if it's Blue's Clues, other cartoons that are able to be played just to increase that comfort for those patients. But great question.
Absolutely, that's an excellent answer. And I do see another question here, and that is, do all staff members need MRI safety training to use the swoop system?
You know what, these are phenomenal questions, so thank you, everyone. So what we do say is, to say a blanket statement, of course, this is a magnet. You do want to be mindful. There are some safety considerations. They are certainly going to be slightly different than what there are in the regular 1.5. But with that being said, we do bring and instruct when we go into hospitals and we're training. We do give a full overview of the safety precautions. But again, there is no concern of projectiles. There is no warming. There's no concern of that heating element that we know of in the MRI, in the traditional MRI, where you don't want to loop your hands together. You don't want to have wires laying on people. That does not come into play with this system. So that's a really great question. We're always mindful of safety, and we don't want to ever detract from the overall MR safety, regardless of what MR environment you're in.
That is a great response. Thank you, Susan. I see another one here. It says, and I know that you touched on this a little bit, while Dr. Knopp was talking and showing some cases in Purview, but could you share what sequences can run on the swoop system?
Sure. I may have mentioned that, but I'll mention that again. So we're looking at your bread and butter, which if you're not an MRI technologist, that's going to be basic sequences like T1, T2, both fast and standard, flare diffusion, flare and diffusion sequencing. And for anyone that's out there that has done diffusion imaging, to think that this level of Tesla strength is able to come through with a fully cleared diagnostic diffusion sequence. And for those that do diffusion, we use a B0 and a B900 with an ADC map. Again, that combined with the flare sequence are often used in that stroke, study environment.
Excellent. Okay, I see another question here. So thanks everyone for submitting these. What are the primary use cases for portable MRIs?
Excellent question. And I don't know if you want to give me the screen back, but we do have a slide that I can potentially show that. However, use cases are, if you want me just to say them, that's fine. I do have a slide that has that. So maybe if I can just bring that up, give me one moment, everyone. And I'm just going to go back to so here we go. Perfect. Great timing, whoever asked that question. So yeah, some of the use cases that we see most commonly are change in the status of a patient, where we don't know what the issue is. They're in intensive care. Something is going, we've been alerted to some changes, and we want that imaging. We don't necessarily want to move the patient, but we are understanding that something has changed within that patient. So this is a great use case for that. Follow-up imaging. We traditionally will say that follow-up imaging for strokes and things that are about 5 millimeters or higher or larger, change in the ventricular size, great, incredible imaging for hydrocephalus cases. We have neurology and neurosurgeons using this, in multiple capacities for just checking ventricles. As I mentioned, a lot of times when patients are waiting to be discharged and they want one quick snapshot of what the ventricles are looking like, they don't need to go to the main department. This is excellent imaging for that reason. Another one is, intraparenchymal hematomas, extraaxial collections, changing in the appearance of an infarct. Certainly once most patients come through, perhaps through an emergency and or stroke protocol, this system is incredible to be following up on imaging that has already occurred without moving that patient out of that highly monitored area. Confirm stability, again, making sure patients are stable enough to go home. I've been in the environment when children who have sustained a subdural, they just want to assess any change in that size, and doctors have said, great, stable, off you go, home you're headed. Midline shift, again, very very easily detectable, obviously, with this type of imaging. And actually post-thrombectomy, which has gotten a lot of extra attention, coming out of the procedure, understanding, the impact on, the brain environment, and subsequently anything that can be seen quickly and not, waited upon to be detected at a later time. So hopefully that answers some of the questions there.
Yes, that's great. So I have another few questions here while Eddie, and it's Susan, totally fine if we want to wait on any of these and defer to Eddie or Dr. Knopp. So the first part of this question is, are there plans for ability to image on other body parts?
That is a question. As they say, if I had $1 for every time, at the moment, no. Not that, again, the future is the future, but our focus truly is in the neuroimaging capacity and improving and bettering that on the sequence level, on the resolutions, and all those things that they kind of come together in that is where our focus is right now.
Excellent. Another one just came in. Is this safe for pediatric patients?
I love this on pediatric patients. It's a dream to have a mom and dad be able to be beside a child. Now when I say pediatrics, I'm talking at the moment 2 years and above. But still, being able to have a child who's afraid, a mom who's afraid, not have to, either watch their child go through, the transporting of, going into that large bore of a magnet, and a mom that maybe cannot even go into the MR environment, but can even still be close enough just outside that orange line. It's near and dear to my heart. I've had the opportunity to be in quite a few children's hospitals, and to have mom and dad nearby is life-changing, I think, for the child and for the mom.
Excellent. Thank you, Susan. And I'm going to pause here as I believe that Eddie may have his audio issues resolved. Dr. Knopp,
Sure.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. Okay. So unfortunately, it looks like Dr. Knopp's audio is not able to be reinstated. We do have a few more questions here.
Sure.
Linda, would you be willing to look at some of these, or Susan, would you be willing to look at a few of these questions in the Q&A box for me?
I can. Or is it easier? It might be easier for you just to say them, if that's okay. Yeah. Or you want me to just go through? I can, yeah.
So so here we go. So what about acquisition time, and if there's a separate tool to do the post-processing?
Oh, that's great. Actually, thank you. This is a wonderful question. Gosh, you guys are right on. So one of the interesting things with the Swoop system is, because what we're doing is we want to keep the workflow moving. We want to keep imaging. We want to make and maximize the amount of time we have that patient in the magnet to get what we need quickly and as quickly as possible. So one of the things that's unique is that while we're imaging, about every 20% of post-processing, or what we call reconstruction of the image. So as in MR, there's a lot of factors. There's case-based, there's a lot of things that go into making that final image an image. And as that 20% is reconstructed, that image will improve and improve. So you are actually watching real time as that image reconstructs. And one of the things is that once that scanning has stopped, so say that knocking noise, that traditional knocking noise may go for 3 minutes, what you can do is you can continue after that 3 minutes, start into your next scan, and then the last minute or so of that previous scan may still be reconstructing. So you're live seeing that reconstruction finalized, but you've already gone on to start your next scan. So you're not wasting any time. You started your next scan, you're now viewing the previous scan. So there is a constant flow, and ultimately always wanting to have the shortest imaging time, the least impact on the patient. So great question, because it is quite a unique thing with this system that you're able to see it live as the reconstruction happens.
Absolutely. Thank you, Susan. So here's another one. Clearing implants has always been a large part of imaging in the ICU population. You mentioned the screening forms being more lenient when hospitals use SWOOP. What kind of ferromagnetic threshold is used for clearing things like aneurysm clips, spinal stimulators, and deep brain stim?
Sure, yeah, DBS simulators or any deep brain devices. So first of all, let me just preface that anything that's outside of what your regular 1.5 Tesla screens for really does become a decision the hospital makes. So when I do make that comment, I say that with the utmost, I say assurities that those hospitals that are doing that are doing it because they have internally decided that whatever number of aneurysm clips or whatever implanted devices they have now decided they're comfortable with them being cleared on a regular basis. So to your point, we will certainly go into centers, and they have worked with medical experts, they've worked with safety experts, and they have all come to the agreement of certain devices, implants, etc., being safe. Now keep in mind that outside that orange line, everything is safe. So if I have something implanted and I'm 7 feet tall, of which I have scanned some people that tall, if I have something that's in my chest and my chest is below that orange line, then it's safe no matter what. So a little bit, not necessarily, I don't think answering your question as what we consider safe, is what the institution considers safe. And a lot of times that comes with practice. I mean, nowadays we see pacemakers going into MR scanners all the time. But again, that is a distinct decision that that institution will make. And then within those institutions, they then share their experiences and then those, abbreviated screening forms. So we will go out and go into multiple places and see very similar screening forms, which most of the time those medical professionals, the physicians, have shared them across different hospitals in the US.
Excellent. Thank you, Susan. I also received a question. Has the system been used in the OR?
So let's say in the OR is different than intraoperative. So in the OR, yes, it has. And again, once the system is in your institution, a lot of these physicians and remarkable people who really do push the envelope of understanding where new devices can be utilized and the benefits of them. So again, it's completely portable, right? It can travel all through the hospital. You can basically image in any environment that you choose. It is not intraoperative, but it has been into the OR.
Thank you. So I just received another question. Let's see here. Can you provide data on image quality compared with conventional systems?
Image quality, was that the question?
Yes. So is there data that exists about the image quality of SWOOP compared to conventional, high field MRI?
Sure. I mean, so, I'm not saying apples and oranges. And again, we're not replacing a 3 Tesla magnet. We don't compare to a 3 Tesla magnet. We are FDA cleared diagnostic imaging. So with that being said, all the parameters and all the resolution requirements and, ability to diagnose and our states the claims certainly have been FDA cleared. Again, not going to be the same as a 3 Tesla, and we're not really trying to be. But to your point, the resolution and ability and things that we do utilize the system for fall well within the realm of being able to make clear diagnosis.
Thank you so much. Yes, no, that does. I'm sorry. I'm just looking here at more questions. I apologize for the delay here. All right. One more thing is I'm just Pulling up a couple more questions, so I appreciate your patience here. Okay, some of these, we have a lot of questions, and some of these I know that Susan, you already answered in your slide. I want to make sure.
And if anyone wants something repeated, by all means, I can say it again. I'm more than happy to do that. You know, one of the great things with this system is that, you know, we're learning from the institutions that have these systems as well. And, you know, one of the things we really look to our customers for is feedback. So as this system is out in you know, different environments across the world, to be honest, and I guess I didn't really speak as to where the system has homes. We are fully global. We are in multiple countries. I can't necessarily list off all the countries that, you know, and where, you know, we're going to be and where we're looking to be. But certainly feel free to reach out to the company if you're in a different country and wondering about the approvals and things and where we are. You know, our company would be more than happy to let you know where things stand. But certainly we are established globally, and it is remarkable to see, and you know, keeping with the ability to move this system into very small places, utilize just a plug in a wall. You know, you can plug it into a generator. Again, in, you know, countries where no imaging is an option. I mean, this is their only option, and we are in those countries as well.
Thank you. And Susan, would you mind going ahead and just minimizing your Outlook reminders for me, please? No problem. So one question is, what are the electricity requirements for a swoop system?
Yes, so the electricity requirement is a standard wall outlet, and that is about 900 watts.
Perfect. Another question I see here are, what are the benefits of using ultra-low field MR imaging for stroke and neurodegenerative conditions like dementia?
This is a lovely question. And so I'll speak on the stroke imaging. Certainly my mention there was that, you know, we are not, you know, in a critical stroke environment. As we know, time is brain. That imaging is of the essence. So we don't, golden standard for stroke imaging, acute stroke imaging, is going to be utilizing the CT. And we all can, you know, imagine why that is the case. It's just, you know, usually a little bit more accessible in most institutions, and certainly a very quick imaging modality. However, once establishing that, you know, those patients sometimes obviously very critical, needing full, you know, monitoring, very, you know, consecutive monitoring, as they know, stroke monitoring. You do need to be checking the patient very frequently, every 20 minutes, and then, you know, imaging, serial imaging, you know, on a daily. So that is where actually Swoop comes in such a remarkable way, in that we are able to go into those environments, not disturb, not remove the patient, slide them up a table a few feet, get the imaging. And again, we're not necessarily looking to diagnose that acute stroke. However, we can follow that stroke. And once you have that baseline, it makes it, you know, obviously our imaging in CT versus MR is another webinar. So I'm not going to get down, you know, into those nitty gritties. However, MR imaging is, you know, wonderful in that stroke setting. The Alzheimer's and other degenerative things, I mean, there's so much happening. I think you can Google certainly a lot of things in the world and research that's happening. You know, I think a lot of it's yet to be understood. Does MR play a role in neurodegenerative changes and diseases? I would say yes. And you know what? I hope you guys stay along for the ride and we all see where that goes together, because you know, I think we all know that there's probably some really incredible things that are not far away in terms of the utility of any form of imaging and some stroke, and some neurodegenerative, probably world's first and things to come yet. So I'm as excited about that as I think, you know, the rest of the world is too.
Thank you, Susan. So kind of to piggyback off of that, what combinations of ultra low field MR imaging sequences can help clinicians assess brain viability in stroke patients?
So I mean, I guess I would say, first of all, in terms of, you know, that follow-up stroke and that stroke imaging and or we would utilize the flare and the diffusion a lot in the stroke imaging. Obviously, for those who know the backgrounds to what a T1, typically will show more anatomy, T2 is very much pathology. But utilizing the flare and the diffusion allows you to delineate to a higher level, and especially when you're looking at the changes of blood over the course of time, it allows you to make a little bit more detailed, as a deeper dive into what those particular areas of the brain are representing, especially in the stroke capacity.
Thank you so much. So could you just share some limitations of ultra low field MRI imaging, such as the lesion detection?
Sure. So, I mean, what we do say, and have people said that they've seen things that are smaller than maybe another place has said, sure. But what we do stand by the fact is that, 5 millimeters is certainly a line that we are comfortable in talking about. Lesions 5 millimeters. Again, when you become comfortable with the imaging, it is a bit different, obviously, than a 3 Tesla. So it does have a learning curve, and we spend a lot of time with our two, medical directors and, VP of medical affairs and our head of our clinical research. And they're very well versed on, speaking to other clinicians, giving that, I guess the, tools needed to just understand the imaging of an ultra low field versus maybe a 1 Tesla, 1.5 or higher. Yeah, so I think that hopefully would answer. In terms of the limitations and the size, I would just say by the fact that we are very comfortable saying 5 millimeter lesions are well detectable.
Okay, so here's the questions are just keep coming in. So can you use the swoop system to detect midline shift?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Beautifully. Yes, that is one of our major indications for sure.
Okay, and can you also use swoop to detect sub-millimeter lesions?
Sub-millimeter meaning less than 5. I would say at this time that is not recommended as your go-to clearing if you're trying to make a firm decision on that. So again, I'd stick with the 5 millimeters. Again, we've had sites say that they've certainly identified smaller, but as we were comfortable saying 5.
Okay, perfect. And we have just a few minutes left. I have another question that just popped in. Have you ever been able to see an intraparenchymal abscess?
I guess I would have to understand the size and, I mean, I would not say that I have clearly diagnosed one. Would I say that probably one has been visualized? However, I would leave that up to Dr. Knopp and our other medical directors to make a firm comment on that. Again, it's going to be size dependent. Again, anything that's 5 millimeters and visible on our imaging sequences would be detectable.
Excellent. I see one more question here, and that is, how can a rural health facility benefit from a low field MRI?
Oh gosh, you're pulling my heartstrings. So not that anyone here would maybe know that I am Canadian, and I do live in the US and work in the US. However, there is a location in very northern Canada, where they have a swoop system, and no imaging is able to be performed there without the fact that the system is so mobile and so portable. The system has been on planes, trains, airlifted locations across the world. So to say that it is in some of the most remote places in the world would be an understatement. So I would say that bringing something when there's nothing is what this system can do, 100%.
Thank you. And I think we maybe have time for one more. Have there been benefits to institutions in terms of length of stay in various units?
Absolutely. There's absolutely been documented length of stay benefits for swoop. And I would be happy to make sure if anyone is interested, we can send you some literature on that and what that has meant to an institution. certainly here in the US. Being able to be literally beside a patient where they were either going to stay for 3 days or go home that day. I've gotten phone calls. Can you come? Can you help us? We're going to scan our first, child. We're going to do all these first. But this is making the decision on a Friday afternoon if this patient can go home or stay until Monday, and been right there bedside, and they've made that decision. And the mom, the sister, the brother, whomever, they're like, let's go. We got a green light. So length of stay, a tremendous asset to reducing that length of stay for many reasons.
Okay, well, thank you. Linda, I believe that that's the last question that we have.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren, for a great Q&A session. Thank you, Susan, for filling in for Dr. Knott. We're sorry that we didn't get to hear him, but maybe another time. So thank you again for your time today. And we do apologise for the technical hitch, unfortunately. I just want to also thank our sponsor, Hyperfine Inc., for sponsoring us today. And for more information about their product, please visit hyperfine.io. As promised, the answer to today's trivia question is, of course, Clara Barton. So congratulations to our winner, Audrey Harris. Just a quick reminder, you can obtain your C certificate by completing the post-webinar survey, which will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 ARC Category A CE credit by the HRA, and you'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. Please visit icewebinars.live for more details of all our upcoming ICE webinars and, of course, complimentary registration. Thank you once again for your time again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.